Now let's hear from Asra Nomani, a former journalist and now an outspoken activist for parents' rights in public schools. And she is the author of Woke Army, which delves further into what is going on in America these days with the radicals versus conservatives. And Asra has been observing this new pushback by immigrant parents in particular, who are opposed to the LGBTQ movement to push and teach kindergartners about gay sex and gender reversal. Now, remember, a week or two ago, Glendale, California, big school board protest outside, and Armenian and Hispanic parents were protesting. They fight off Antifa and give them a good old-fashioned ass whooping. So great to see. And then there's a protest in Montgomery County, Maryland, and Asra Nomani was there. Thanks so much, Asra. And tell us what was basically going on and what were the immigrant parents there and the Muslim parents there protesting versus the liberal LGBTQ crowd.
Oh my gosh, Dennis, this is such an honor to be with you. I am so happy that you've got this platform and this podcast. You're a voice that America needs. And if people don't know it, Dennis and I go back in the day to the Wall Street Journal newsroom. And Dennis, every single thing that I learned in the newsroom, I am now applying as a parent activist and as a mama bear in the trenches of the culture wars. I always wanted to be a war correspondent. I don't know if you knew that, Dennis.
No.
I covered the airline industry, right? And I became the airfare war correspondent. Like that was not exactly what I was imagining, but here, everything we learned, Dennis, everything about how to just pierce through the noise, how to understand the money, how to follow the money. I'm doing all that now in the trenches. And there I ended up last week on the sidewalk in front of the Montgomery County Public Schools Administration Office. And it's in a town called Rockville, Maryland, right outside of our nation's capital. And wow, in front of me, I saw this sea of Muslim parents. And opposite them, across the sidewalk, across the street and across the sidewalk, were about 10 woke women. We've all heard of Antifa, the far left, radical group. Yes. Well, I call these guys Antifa, like the aunties in the community who want to enforce us as parents and silence us. And this was the showdown that is going to split the woke army, Dennis. I stood there and I did a little selfie video and I said, the woke army is dead because the transgender activism drove these parents that have been in bed, unfortunately, with the far left in America to realize that the far left was coming after their kids. And so the Muslim organizations are now divided because they have traditionally been supporting the Democratic Party, but they realize now that Democratic school board members from Montgomery County, Maryland to Glendale, California are now, infusing this radical, extremist, age-inappropriate sexual and gender content into the lives of their kids, and they're not going to have any of it.
Liberal friends of mine say, what's so wrong with kids realizing that gay people are okay and you shouldn't hate them? But this content goes actually beyond that, doesn't it? And it goes to a very younger age. Show us some books or show us what bothers parents about this, because otherwise it sounds like it's anti-gay, but it's not that.
Right. No, Dennis, and you know me so well. We've known each other for decades, and I just want to thank you so much, because before anybody followed me on this stuff, there you were on Twitter, retweeting me, giving me a like, sending me a message of support, Dennis. And every time you did that, it uplifted me, because it has been a lonely fight, in part because, in fact, just like you say, there has been a war of words in which the parents are being cast as book banners, and reactionaries. The Southern Poverty Law Center, as you know, just put a bunch of parent groups on their extremist list. Well, I'm a classic liberal. Dennis, I am the same person you knew in the newsroom. I'm a feminist. I believe in equal rights, human rights. As a Muslim, I'm a reformer. So I fight against the interpretations of religious law or Sharia that say that we must kill people who are from the LGBTQ community. I have gotten death threats, but
Thanks for taking that stance, Asra. Appreciate that.
it's so important, and it's so important. It's so obvious, right? On top of
Right.
everything else. But they've gone too far, these activists, in trying to now put age inappropriate content in front of kids. This is just one book. This is for the fat little fingers of preschoolers. And if those that cannot see it, I'm going to describe this book. Beautiful color, beautiful pink on one side, baby blue on the other, little cute baby in the middle. And across the top is the title of the book, Bye Bye Binary. These are kids who don't even know how to brush their teeth, and they're being introduced to words like bye bye binary.
That they can give up their sex. And what is the possibility? It's only 5 people out of 1,000 that are trans at all. So why are you wanting to have books that would teach this to 1,000 kids out of 1,000? I just don't understand it. Go ahead. Tell us another.
I understand it very clearly, because you know this too, Dennis, about me, that 20 years ago, after the tragedy of the 9/11 attacks, I became an activist in my Muslim community fighting against extremist indoctrination. So for 20 years, this is what I've been doing within my faith. And you and I share the story of our dear friend, Danny Pearl from the Wall Street Journal, who was killed because of identity politics and sectarianism.
Murdered by terrorists.
Murdered by terrorists and extremists, So what is this? What is it that's happening is that we have identity politics and sectarianism, like nations like Lebanon and Pakistan have been defined, and they're going after issues of gender and sex. And so this is another book, Gay BCs. And so instead of A being for apple, it's now a word that even adults don't even process, which is A is for arrow and ace, words we use to say that love and attraction may be felt in many ways. Well,
A is for arrow, ARROW. What is that?
ARO, which is a new word that they're introducing. I know, I don't even think, I've never used it in my life. We're professional writers, right, Dennis?
Jeez.
And the B is for buy. You can say it, you can shout it out loud. And instead of T being for train, T is for, you can imagine, trans. So
oh my gosh. And this is a book for preschoolers.
Yes, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. Yeah. And what is the trajectory here? And what is the wider context? So Dennis, you and I have been trained on following the money. Now, propaganda is part of the publishing empire that communicates these ideas to change the normative in society. So we all know that we had this critical race theory that was, playing with people's identity politics on issues of race. So now what's happened is we have queer theory. So queer theory is the new quote pedagogy under which all of this is being taught. So we went from critical race theory to queer theory. And now those little baby books are being put into the hands of the teenagers with books like Gender Queer, which has really brutal images. You'll see this one of a knife going through the pelvic area of a young man, doubled over with blood coming out.
And why? Because what is his problem?
His gender identity.
His gender dysphoria.
Yeah. And then this book is also one that includes the images of, oral sex and a man with a beard playing with the penis of a little boy.
Okay, so this goes too far, and yet the liberals have adopted this movement, and they assume that any pushback at all amounts to hate. And let's take it over to the Montgomery County protest that you were that you're at. And by the way, guys, I want to read you a tweet from Asra, because one of her tweets is, mostly immigrant parents in Montgomery County, Maryland, face off against mostly white, American-born woke women of privilege who use Lady Gaga to silence parents of color who outnumber the woke activists at this protest 5-1. and then wait till the end when the woke women refuses to shake my hand while the religiously conservative men extend their hand to me. And Asra, at this point, why don't we just listen to a little sound from you that you posted on Twitter? It got 2 million views, guys, and let's give a listen right here.
Because this is the wedge issue that is going to define 2024.
Not your children! Not your children! Not your children! They're not your children! They're not your children! They're not your children! Not your children!
Year, say yes. Yes. Are you gonna vote next year? Say yes. Yes. Are you gonna vote next year? Say yes. Yes. Thank you.
So tell us more about that day and the people there, and also, if you would, Asra, what kind of implications might this have for the election coming up in 2024?
Yeah, these Muslim parents, the Armenian parents, the Asian parents that are in Northern Virginia fighting for merit, all of these parents of color in the intersectional matrix of the woke army are the Democratic Party's worst nightmare. They are parents who have very often voted Democratic because of the identity politics that immigrants and people of color should vote Democratic. But what has happened now is that, unfortunately, from Democratic school board members in Fairfax County, Virginia, to the White House, we now have a clear platform in which parents are now the enemy and children are now the target in the crosshairs of these activists. So this issue of parental rights, merit education, children's innocence will be the wedge issue in the 2024 election. We have seen the woke ideology penetrate the United States of America from K-12 schools through Disney. This issue resonates because these babies are so innocent and they should not at all be the political football of any activists or politicians. And so parents are very clear. You know, Dennis, you know this about parenting, is that we will lay down our lives for our children. And so these politicians and the Democratic Party has poked the bear, you know, the mama bear and the papa bear. And we could see that the Glendale parents are not afraid of the actual Antifa activists. You know, the Montgomery County parents are not afraid of the politicians, even though they all face many insecurities in this nation: English as a second language, immigration, green card holders, you know, so many issues, but families and children are sacred. And so every politician running for office in 2023 and 2024 has got to include this in their platform on the side of parents and children.
It's so interesting that this issue is being pushed by immigrant parents. You kind of wonder where a lot of the moderate, somewhat liberal parents who are just regular Americans, where they were on this, and they've just been kind of stood down and let this happen. I think there's a big fear of being called homophobic, transphobic.
Right.
They throw that right away if you give any offense at all, any opposition at all.
Yeah, and we don't have fear about this, Dennis. Like, of course, there is, you know, a very real individual fear that folks have about being ostracized in the community or not getting a teacher's recommendation. But you have to remember who these parents are. One of them, Yu Yanzhou, she's a mom that I know here in Northern Virginia. She literally stood in front of the tanks at Tiananmen Square in China. She survived the Cultural Revolution. So, and you know my story, like I have stood down, I've gone to Guantanamo Bay to chase down terrorists. I have hunted them around the world in order to find Danny Pearl's killers. We have seen the darkest of society, and we came to America as a choice and with our families to raise our babies because we refuse that darkness and we refuse to allow that kind of tyranny in the United States of America. And, to your point, I think that many of the center parents, center Democrats, even classic liberals, they are afraid, and we are just the cover that they need, I think, to feel permission, to stand up against the extremists in this identity politics. And I hope that they will learn what we have learned, which is that courage is contagious and that they too can stand up, and that all the parents who are standing up are overcoming their own fears because of love of their children and America's children.
And it's up to them to stand up. And I'm glad that more and more parents are doing it. And if immigrant parents can lead the way, so much the better. I like that last line of yours, Asra, that courage is contagious. And I'm sure the FBI has one fat file on you. And I hope someday you're able to get that and unearth it and man, I can't wait for your next book, because that, what was your book, your Woke Army? And please follow her on Twitter too, because you'll see stuff that just, is so striking and so against the grain that the rest of the media aren't telling you. Asra Nomani, thank you for being on What's Bugging Me. And you got to come on again. Okay. Promise?
Absolutely, Dennis. You're a friend to me always. And every moment that you have ever extended of support, I have remembered. And your own support has made it so that I can stand up courageously. So thank you.
Ah, shucks. All right. Thanks. Have a glorious day.
All right. Thank you, Dennis.